Well,
Ladies and gentlemen, hello and
careful.
welcome to you all. It's such a pleasure to be here. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here with such a fabulous panel who need no introduction, but I'll run through them anyway. Robbie, Revolution, Precrafted, Tony, AirAsia, Forrest Li Group, who's next? Chatri, over there, won championship, and at the end, Andre, Gojek. Welcome. Please give the panel a very big, warm welcome. Now, you can see what the name of the panel is on the screens, or the title of what we're going to be talking about today. But it encompasses something really very, very big in what we're seeing in today's world, and that is, of course, the word innovation. And one of the questions that I get asked a lot, I suppose, is what exactly is that? Well, we've got a few very different stories that we're going to share with you over the course of the panel today. But I do have one question for the panel members, which I'd like you all to think about as well, because it's relevant to everybody that's here today. Can each of you, and Andre, I'm going to put you in the hot seat and get you to kick things off, think about the most innovative thing, person, object that you've seen in the very recent past. Andre?
Sure. Tony, I'm probably going to steal a little bit of your thunder here, but I think, hi everyone, Andre. So I think I could represent everyone in the room and say anti-aging pill will probably be the best innovation there is, so that we can all live more than 100 years, right?
You are so stealing his thunder, Andre.
No, I mean, just joking. Joking aside, so for me personally, I think there's definitely a lot of innovations happening in the world, which is quite mind-blowing. But I think what's relevant to us is how those innovations will be able to be applicable in solving people's problem, right? And that's actually where we started our business focused in. To solve inequality in terms of income generation. So anything that could help innovation in that perspective, financial inclusion, allowing people to actually access credit, allowing many types of commerce transactions to democratize everything has actually changed everything in our perspective, and that's kind of where we're focused on from a business standpoint. Yeah.
So aside from anti-aging, Andre, before we go on, what is the one thing that you've seen in the very near past which has been the most innovative, exciting thing, person that you've spoken to, opinion, idea that you've heard in the recent past?
That's why I like to kind of put that into perspective of what we do, right? Because, yes, innovation is amazing, but if it's not applicable to solve people's life, it will not be as powerful from an impact perspective, especially coming from a country like Indonesia, where there's a lot of opportunity to elevate transformation with innovation. So the stories comes from our interaction with drivers, allowing drivers to actually now be able to generate income where they couldn't before. Stories about how small mom and pop merchants for our GoFood platform, who never sells to rich people, and being able to market effectively, and now they can actually allowing, with our platform, we'll be able to actually tap into that as well. So things like that, it's more relevant and touching from my perspective. But generally, I mean, applying innovations into what we do is the key word. Yeah.
Who wants to go next? Silence.
Andre sounded like Miss World there.
Well, that's not necessarily a bad thing, Tony.
Trying to save the world. But jokes aside, apart from AirAsia, which I think is the greatest innovation ever.
Of course.
Which goes without saying.
Yeah.
It would be too narcissistic to say that. I gotta say, and this is not Mutual Admiration Society, but I think what Gojek has done is pretty damn cool. When I arrived in Jakarta, and you see the number of motorbikes around and the ability to create jobs out of guys riding bikes, and then to transform the economy into, I'm going to Lyft and I see a Gojek massage guy, which is a slight aberration in their model, going to give someone a massage in the Four Seasons Hotel. it is amazing what that innovation has done. And I think it bodes well because that innovation has led to, and it's not just Gojek, it's everyone around this table or this panel. What Asia has always had is one or two guys. You know, now this whole digital transformation has brought in so many new competitors, and consumers are benefiting. You know, it's great to see, you know, Grab, Uber, and Gojek, they all hate each other. It's not just airlines that, you know, that hate each other, or all airlines hate me. So it's good to see, you know, you see Chatri, UFC hates him, and everyone hates Shopee, and everyone loves him because he looks so good. So I think it's like innovation. I mean, bottom line is people like Gojek have really kind of turned business models upside down, disrupted, and it's brought out a lot of competition, and the consumers are benefiting. And really, it's such a simple idea that has transformed Indonesia. And it's become, you know, we are now creating, you know, where it was Google and became verbs and nouns, Gojek and people like that have created Asian champions that are changing things around, which is exciting for me.
That's a pretty big pat on the back, I'd say.
I love you, Tony.
I know.
Forrest?
And I want your database. I love Milken, man.
That's what we're here for.
Yeah, we have seen, I'm very pleased and amazed by seeing how the grassroots innovation developed across the region related to digital economy. So I can give you like some examples. Say over the past 6 months to 9 months, we see tremendous hundreds of thousands of sellers. Like actually, they are the micro entrepreneurs, and it's probably like they start to leverage the e-commerce opportunity to run a business for themselves, right? And they start to do the retail by leveraging the e-commerce platform, which they have never done before when with the traditional retail. And so there's a lot of innovation happening there. So I can give you one example. So recently I met a seller from Indonesia, and she was an office lady in Jakarta, but she got some problem with her skin. So her skin always gets some skin problems. So every time she used the normal the skincare product, and they get allergic reactions. And then they start to, she's very frustrated, and they start to make her own soup just for her own skin. And it works. And then she start to sell, nothing sell, but start to offer this soup among her relatives and friends. And later on, because of the popularity, she realized, okay, could be a very interesting business opportunity. So she take 1 year off from her office work and start to run a full-time business, just selling her soap on Shopee, on our e-commerce platform. So, and now it's become a very successful business. So every day we see hundreds of thousands such entrepreneurs because of the digital economy, because of the e-commerce platform and other digital platforms enable them to become an entrepreneur. And actually recently, bank just released a report talking about this digital economy trend, and actually we also advise for that report. Basically, that they realize actually if a lot of traditional business or small and medium-sized business start to leverage the opportunity of digital economy, and the entire ASEAN economy by 2026 will be jumped by another $1 trillion, So that is a huge opportunity. I think those grassroots innovation enabled by digital economy is really something great, and it's really something amazing happening.
Robbie?
I mean, I see innovation every day. I'll just give an example for sort of this week. I was speaking in another panel, a different conference 2 days ago with a Singaporean-based SaaS company that does enlivens and digitizes all these products in your grocery stores and FMCG industry. And it's the first one in the world really does that, and really is probably going to leapfrog even Amazon to do that. I mean, that's born in Asia, right? Yesterday I was talking to a VC fund who uses artificial intelligence to basically winnow out 99% of the business plan that will probably not fit and be a hit, right? So every day I meet a lot of interesting entrepreneurs outside my industry, and that really inspires me.
Okay, Chatri?
Well, it's no secret that the global sports media industry is under massive disruption because of technology. So it's really fascinating to see how traditional media broadcast companies, how they're innovating, how the new young gun digital guys, well actually they're not young, they're huge giants like Alibaba and Tencent and Google and Facebook, and how sports has now really become the king of content, but at the same time, it's a mad race because no one knows how the landscape's going to shape out. So I see that every day, and you know, for all these sports events, we used to think of sports events as just sitting at home watching it, or being in a stadium and just watching it. But with AR and VR and everything that's coming along, like there's going to be a time when you're sitting in your living room and you'll feel like you're in the stadium because you know there'll be a stadium backdrop in your own living room with the lights and sounds and feels of the actual event, like as if you were right ringside or if you were cage side. So there's a lot of new technologies that I see every day as well, and One Championship will be adopting a lot of those things. But it's a really fascinating time because of so much disruption around the world.
You know, it's also a very difficult time because of said disruption. You know, the opportunities that it's created that you gentlemen have just been discussing also causes a whole lot of problems in its wake as well. So with all of your individual journeys, what has been the toughest part of that journey, whether it be something in business or something personal that you've had to deal with as a result of your choices in business? Tony?
Wow. I've had 17 years of crises. You know, so it's kind of hard to pick one. But, you know, the strong thing about all of this is there's always a silver lining. You know, there's always an opportunity. You know, during SARS, which was our first crisis, no one wanted to fly. They thought they'd die if they would fly. And I said to my staff, triple our advertising now. And they looked at me like I was on drugs, which I'm not. And I said, this is the best time to build our brand because no one else is advertising. Plus, I knew Malaysians very well. If you put a fare low enough, they will risk their lives. Okay? 800 ringgit, I'm not flying a KK. 80 ringgit, who cares? So, you know, there's always an opportunity. I think that's the strength of Asia, is that there's a lot of consumers, there's a lot of demand, and I think that's how we've gone from 2 planes to 230 in 17 years. You know, we first started, we carried 200,000 passengers, and this year we'll carry 90 million passengers. And that is, I think, is the underpinning of what is exciting about Southeast Asia and Asia. I think the big problem for most of us here, but probably less so for the guys. And by the way, I'm really thrilled to be on this panel because I've been trying to tell everyone I'm not an airline, I'm a tech company. So, you know, Milken is the first group to recognize that AirAsia is a tech company. We all dress kind of differently. Forrest, I didn't recognize him. Before he IPO'd, he looked like me. Now he looks like all of you. So I didn't recognize him in the bathroom.
You're allowed to respond, Forrest.
I was like, that Chinese dude looks familiar, but I didn't quite click. But I think one of the big problems in Asia is governments.
Yeah.
And a lot of governments here are involved in business. And I've always been professing that government should be facilitating business and not being involved in business. And I think one of the problems I've had over the last 16 years as you try to change the business model and introduce new things, and now we're doing it in the fintech world, et cetera, is regulators and regulation, and people don't like change so much. A lot of these guys have managed to avoid it because they built their businesses so fast, the governments couldn't catch up with them. But now you begin to see them trying to regulate great businesses. So I think that's something that governments should not try and over-control businesses, should allow entrepreneurs to be entrepreneurs. And I think that's been the toughest thing for me over the last 16 years as we try and build this, you know, Asian and ASEAN business.
I think that's a really interesting point you make. In fact, the last conversation that I had with Robbie Antonio from Monetary Authority in Singapore was that he couldn't keep up on regulation front. So is that something that you guys are experiencing? I mean, you look at the growth in some of your businesses. Andre, for example, incredible growth, very fast growth. I mean, is regulation a problem for you?
I think we've, so first of all, I think the nature of our business is creating jobs. So for instance, in Indonesia, we indirectly already employ the largest in the history of Indonesia right now. So we indirectly employ like 1 million plus people in the platform. So that can actually, which comes from underemployed, both underemployment and also unemployed, right? So in retrospect, I think government is very supportive with that types of, especially with the Jokowi administration that really embraces social empowerment, financial inclusion, and digital transformation. But obviously, when we start touching things like payments, financial services, which naturally has a little bit more protection, I think our hope is, and so far there's been many great interactions with the government, be able to actually start thinking about experimentations, right? Because sometimes regulators think from a past history, but a lot of things that we do, there's no precedent yet, right? So allowing sandboxing, experimentations to be able to see and monitor from distance before regulating it will actually be something that is, will be very facilitative. So things like the best word to say this is like sometimes no regulation is the best regulation for these types of innovation. So I think that's been a quite positive, interaction with the government. But obviously, knowing the speed of things that all of us try to grow, it's always not enough, right? Not fast enough. So.
But is that an argument with the government that you're ever going to win? No regulation is good regulation?
I'm sorry?
Can you ever win an argument like that with the government? Telling them that no regulation is good regulation?
You will surprise that many of, ministers actually think that way. Having said that, there's always structural issues about how one individual.
Which minister is that?
No comment.
Indonesia, I think, not Malaysia.
Yeah.
Forrest, well, you're in the payment space as well. I mean, we're talking primarily about, financial services, fintech, payments here. I mean, how many issues are you having on the regulation front?
Yeah, definitely. I think I think in a way we feel there's a lot of new opportunities, and we see some more advanced market, and say in China, right? And all the consumers, everybody enjoying the convenience of e-payment. And I think it's a relatively still early stage for Southeast Asia. I think not just as a private sector, as a business side, I think this is something new to the regulator, to the government. I think by the end of the day, they embrace, because this is indeed bring the convenience to the whole economy. And it's just how the private sector and the public sector can work together to make it happen, right? So I think that is a key focus at this moment. I'm still thinking about your previous question, asking, so what is the challenge, right? I think from my personal experience, so we have I came to Singapore 2006 and started a company in 2009. So it has been almost a 9-10 years journey. So we went public last year on NYSE, and the turnout is the largest. We didn't know that before the IPO, actually turned out to be the largest US IPO in history by a Southeast Asian company. And I think this has been a very interesting journey. If I think back, I think the most difficult part is the recognition of entrepreneurship for the society in Southeast Asia. So, and basically, I think today a lot of audience here, a lot of you here working with a very established, very reputable organizations. And when you get a chance to talk to your family, talk to your friends, you feel very proud to tell them, okay, I work for this great organization. Everybody say, okay, wow, that's fantastic. You have a great career. And I think still at this moment, even where they have made some success, and as an entrepreneur, when you tell a lot of people, including your family and friends, say, okay, this is my idea, I want to do this, I want to do that. I think like most of the answer people say like, really, can you really do it? Can you really do it? I think like this is a challenge. I think like to holding back the innovation of the society. I can give you two quick examples. And when we started, we really need good engineers, good programmers, fresh graduate from school. And back then we went to we tried to hire the best students to from the computer science, from NUS, from NTU. And we realized actually the best students, their dream job is working for a bank in the IT support department. So, yeah, so because if they ask like between that job and the startup, kind of join a 10 people startup, I think like if they go to ask their parents which one should I take, and if they ask their teachers, ask their friends, everybody say, okay, you should join the bank, right? And so that is a real challenge where we're facing. I remember back then, our solution is like we drive just to the school and drive our car to the school and waiting at the door of the classroom of those majors. And we get a chance, like we grab every single student we can grab and just tell them what we are doing, what we dream about, what we're trying to do. If by any chance, luckily, some of them are interested, and we just grab them into the car and drove to our office.
You know that's illegal in
Yeah, and then let them to talk to more people, see our product, our roadmap. That is a way. That is how we get started to build up our engineering team, and we purposely like build up the offer the competitive compensation. Like we have to match the whatever the bank offer, because we don't want this become the kind of a brain block of the when they choose the job. And when we go to the campus for recruiting, we always make sure our booth for the recruiting booth is always the biggest among the entire job fair, because we realize students have this perception, whoever have a bigger booth, that is a bigger company. Yeah. So it's a take time, and if you look at now, I think things change a lot, and there is more and more like computer science students and love to take a more entrepreneurial job after graduation instead of working for a very big organization. So this is one thing is always like I feel very interesting. I see the trend. Another thing is like I think as an entrepreneur, how resilient you are, and how strong you are inside yourself is very critical, because every day you just hear many no. You cannot make it, you cannot do it, then you can do it. So that's but the other, you have to convince yourself, and you can do it. And another like a quick example is like if you're familiar with C, right? And so we started as a game company, and we for the first 5 years we managed to build up the largest digital entertainment platform in the region. And at the 2015, we realized there was a great chance for e-commerce here in Southeast Asia. Just looking at the number, like here, e-commerce, even just today, just kind of like 2% of the entire retail and as e-commerce as a percentage. But compared to China and the US, which close to 20%. So there's a huge opportunities. And we decided to tap on this opportunity. We take a lot of courage to jump into some area beyond our comfort zone. And everybody told me, at first you shouldn't do it, and you already have a very profitable game business, and why you risk yourself, why you go to jump into competing with some giants here, like Alibaba, like somebody else as well, right? And but like as an entrepreneur, you need to listen to yourself. Like back then, I realized there is such a no great offering as an e-commerce. I simply cannot swallow that fact, and I cannot sleep during the night. Such a great thing doesn't exist in Southeast Asia. I think that is a drive for us to build up our e-commerce platform, Shopee. And just after 3 years, and it's already the largest e-commerce platform in Southeast Asia. I think like this is what I want to share, the reflection of my entrepreneurial journey. Yeah.
So who out there right now is thinking in their head, should I start an e-commerce platform in Southeast Asia? With 2% penetration, there's plenty of room, right?
Yeah, still.
Well, there's no competitors out there, obviously.
You know, I agree with Forrest, like, because my own journey I started One Championship 7 years ago, and I thought, man, it's gonna be easy, every region of the world has several multi-billion-dollar sports media properties, and Asia has nothing. So I said, look, North America has NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, market cap of 75 billion, 39 billion, and 37 billion, respectively. Then Europe, F1, Champions League, EPL, etc., and they're all worth tens of billions. I said, man, it must be easy because I'm going to do it on martial arts, which is Asia's greatest cultural treasure, 5,000-year history. There's a martial art in every single country that's part of the fabric of society, culture, history, the value set of Asia. I said, oh, it's going to be super easy. The first 3 years, literally, thousands of rejections, thousands of failures. I couldn't get broadcasters to air the content. I couldn't get employees to join the company. I couldn't get advertiser sponsors to make a bet. Governments wouldn't be allowed to host an event in any country. And it was just like we were burning millions and millions. And to Forrest's point, I'm half Thai, half Japanese, and my mother is Japanese, very conservative Japanese lady. She was really against it. She's like, when I said, Mom, I'm going to retire from Wall Street, I'm going to chase my biggest dream, which is I love martial arts, and I'm going to make Asia's first multi-billion-dollar global sports media property. He said, that's a terrible idea. Don't do it. Don't do it. All my friends and family said, it's so stupid. You're crazy. You've lost it, Chatri, you know. And I said, no, watch me. I'm going to do it. 3 years into it, I call my mom. I'm like, Mom, I don't think it's working out, you know, like, you know. And my mom's like, you see, I told you. You should listen to Mommy. But she said something she knows me so well. She said, Chatri, why don't you just quit? And after I hung up the phone and those words, and she said, why don't I just quit? You know, I called her because I was wanting to quit. But when she said, why don't you just quit? It's something lit a fire in me. I said, absolutely no, there's no way in hell I'm going to let my mom tell me I'm going to quit. So I'm a mama's boy. But literally, I'm lucky I didn't quit because that year our online video views were 300,000. And 3 years later, they're 4 billion. So if I had quit at that moment, I would never have seen this whole ride. And our TV ratings went from 1% to 2% peak TV rating share to 11 to 55%, when the average global sports property in Asia, NBA, F1, Champions League, they do about 7%. And now we're averaging 11% to 55%. So we've just blown out every sports property, global sports property that has come into the continent. And so I really relate to what Forrest's word is, like grit and resilience, and the fact that you're going to take a lot of no's, a lot of rejection, a lot of failures. And no one ever thought that, at that time, that there was a need. People were like, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard. And today they're like, oh my God, sports property, amazing, what a great idea. And like literally, so it's like, you know, you have to, as I say, fight through the worst days of your life to earn the best days of your life.
Mm. Yeah, I think there's some...
Yeah, that's very inspirational. Chatri and I were talking about this actually before the panel, and a lot of people think entrepreneurship is like all glitz and glamour, headlines here, Tony expands here, Forrest does a major IPO, Chatri, but behind the scenes, 500 emails, fighting, fire, every single 10 minutes. From my end, I had to actually unlearn everything I learned. So I come from the traditional real estate development background, where I developed towers and all, and I actually wanted to disrupt the own space I knew so well. So 3 years ago, I started Revolution with the premise that I wanted to create an asset-light business that is truly global, that can actually produce structures, homes, in at least 60 days, and differentiate it with the world's best architects and designers. So we now have 81 of the world's best architects, designers, celebrities, brands, to actually design these, and we ship them all over the world. We've closed 25 countries in all 6 continents right now in 2.5 years. The mission is to be the biggest home supplier in the world. But behind all of that, it's a lot of education. We're using modular and prefab technology. And guess what? You use the word prefab, everyone's against it. Exactly like what Chatri says, right? Who believes in that, right? So it's a lot of education for the industry. We sell to a lot of developers all around the world, and they want to try it out. But fortunately for us, it's been a proven concept. So it's the constant education, the resilience, and the resolve, and really the heart to take all of this, because it's a lot of roller coaster emotional drama.
You know, for all of these stories that we're listening to today, which are each and individually quite incredible in their own right, and I'm sure that you'll all agree with me, highly inspirational, highly motivational when you hear these stories. But you guys have all now got companies behind you. You've got employees, you've got people working for you that also need to come to the company with the same energy, with the same attitude. Now, companies, as we all know very well, are rewarded for safety. They're rewarded for stability, particularly if they're listed companies. But companies everywhere are rewarded for those things. When you talk about innovating, you talk about disrupting, you talk about doing different things, that doesn't necessarily gel with safety and security and stability. So how do you bring those two things together now that you're not one individual chasing a dream, you're now significantly, in some cases, listed companies?
I think for me, the most important thing is igniting passion in the hearts of my team with a purpose, a life purpose. So, since day one championship, our mission has been to unleash real life superheroes who ignite the world with hope, strength, dreams, and inspiration. And what do I mean by that? The vast majority of our athletes come from massively impoverished backgrounds, tragedy, orphanages, and when we're able to build these stories, I'll give you an example, Edward Falayang, our Filipino world champion. He was born to illiterate parents in the bottom rungs of society in the Philippines. He had 9 brothers and sisters. 5 died when he was a child, just because of basic illness. They couldn't afford a doctor. I mean, you can imagine being a child growing up and 5 of your brothers and sisters dying. Luckily, in his slums, there was a local martial arts center that was free training. He poured his grief and sorrow into martial arts. And because of the power of martial arts, he inherited through thousands of hours of training, he inherited integrity, humility, honor, respect, courage, discipline, compassion. These are the values of martial arts. He became the first person in his family to read and write, the first person to go to university, the first person to represent his nation in wushu on the global stage, and eventually came to one championship, won the world title in it, came back, and the Philippines Senate had a day in his honor, a parade. The Philippines media crowned him Athlete of the Year, above Manny Pacquiao. And that story has nothing to do with martial arts or fighting or violence. It's about the power of the human spirit. It's about how one man conquered poverty, tragedy, adversity. And that story has ignited all the Philippines. And that's what the essence is. If I tell that story and I say, guys, we are here to ignite the world with hope, strength, dreams, and inspiration. You see, I think money is the weakest form of motivation. If I think about how to rally my team, of course I pay top dollar for my team. But what really gets people to go to the extra deep, put their hearts and souls and minds to everything, is an unbelievable cause, an unbelievable purpose that's genuinely changing the world. And so when we build these heroes and tell those stories and see the entire Philippines nation watching live, celebrating, rooting, a guy who's bringing honor and glory to their country and creating hopes and dreams, that for me is what allows my team and I to always wake up in the morning gunning 1,000 miles an hour.
Yeah. So in all seriousness, I want to come work for you.
So I think on our side, I think just to kind of summarize the panel's thoughts as well, we tend to also forget that Southeast Asia or ASEAN is unprecedented level from a competition perspective, because unlike when China becomes maturing, they had time to, a lot of the great Chinese companies had time to actually go and build their businesses over the 6, 7, 8 years. But now, since all the US companies have made billions of dollars, Chinese companies have done hundreds of billions of dollars, everyone's looking at India and Southeast Asia. So not only we're in a situation where we need to grow up, because many of us is the first-time business owners, right, or entrepreneurs, but we have to compete with the best of the best coming from many directions, right? And unprecedented capital raise, SoftBank is, vision was created, and et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of the problem is you have to juggle, keep juggling, right? You have to fight very fiercely with the competition. You have to motivate the team, as Chatri mentioned, and that's actually very difficult to do. And in our story, we started with $2 million, where we fight the other green, which has $250 million from SoftBank back then, and obviously Uber, who has billions of dollars. And I think that is kind of a very difficult start to begin with. Now, so in Gojek, to kind of answer your question, we took a different route. We took a different route because we know that to be able to be executing many products that we have in our platform right now, we're not the best in our kind of capabilities to be able to deliver that. For instance, payments, when we go into payments, when we go into all kind of the financial services and stuff. So we made a decision that in the last 3 years to also do a lot of inorganic acquisitions. So if you think about Gojek today, we're a collective of 8 CEOs that come and join us as a group. with clear, very alignment on vision, what we wanted to contribute back to the country. We acquired those companies and the founders who now becoming a leader in our company, so that in some sense, it's not about just Nadeem, myself, or many like top 3 or 4 people in the company. Now we're building a very strong bench of like-minded leadership who really wanted to make a change for Indonesia and to a certain extent Southeast Asia as we expanded there, and being able to actually drive those execution and kind of culture of collaboration in the organization to be able to cope, right? Because otherwise, it's very hard to just do things while you're fighting like big giants. You have to raise capital, billions of dollars, and still executing for the, for millions of people, right? And that's actually have been the challenge, but also kind of the excitement in that perspective.
How much of a challenge has that been for you, running a listed company with that safety, stability aspect versus continuing to drive the innovation, of which you guys do a huge amount of?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, quarterly numbers and
Exactly.
analysts and bankers.
Don't say anything bad about analysts, who are in the room.
I never would. I love them all. They're incredibly smart people. So, but I think, you have to balance what the market wants and what analysts want with thinking long term, and that isn't easy. It's a tough struggle. But I think ultimately, right now we have a higher oil price, so traditional airlines are cutting capacity, cutting routes, etc. But we think there's huge demand, and we are seeing huge demand. So, we bite the bullet. We ride that wave. We innovate, find different ways of dealing with the higher oil price through ancillary income or through consolidation costs of making a more ASEAN-based airline, and driving innovation. That we're working very closely with Palantir and Google, and data is such an exciting product. And so you've got to not think short term, because short term, if we make the numbers look good for the third quarter and then destroy the essence of your business, then you've got to rebuild it again. So over the last 17 years, when I said that, we've been through so many crises, and we have been through so many crises, we never moved away from the long-term plan, and that's enabled us to keep growing. And when you come out of these peaks and troughs of oil, etc., then you're in a much stronger position to deal with that. I think just to echo the guys earlier on, I think the two things I want to say. I think Southeast Asia, or ASEAN as I relate, is a fantastic opportunity. China is 1.3 billion people, and that's enabled them to build the kind of global giants that they have. We in Southeast Asia have 10 different governments and 10 different rules and regulations, but I'm a big optimist on ASEAN. And from when I started the airline 17 years ago, and I had this vision of ASEAN and a common market, etc., it's moved so much. And yes, there's a lot to be done. But I think, you see Gojek now in Vietnam and soon in Thailand, and you see Grab everywhere, and you see Shopee everywhere in Southeast Asia. It's coming, and I think that's a huge, huge opportunity. But I think what's underpinning it is huge consumer appetite, a growing middle class, an insatiable consumption pattern, which is growing, whether it's One FC. And by the way, he's in a great business because they have no regulation. They just go in there and kill each other in the ring. So there's an insatiable appetite. And then I think what people miss out on is the huge amount of talent that we have here. And why I said Gojek is my kind of hero is that you now have Uber trying to copy them and bring in scooters and bicycles, etc. So traditionally, all the ideas have come from the West, and we've adjusted it a bit and moved it a bit, etc. But in Gojek's case, it's the other way around. They're now trying to imitate Gojek. That's why they're my kind of heroes, that we're producing a lot of intellectual ideas. And so when I look at my workforce, it's phenomenal, the kind of ideas and the idea generation. And that comes from democracy and freedom of speech and things opening up a lot more and allowing much more creativity, So, and, we've grown from 200 staff to 20,000 by being different. We've taken kids who were carrying bags for us, who, didn't go to finish school at 13, and now are chief instructors and pilots. There were no female pilots in Southeast Asia when I started. And I said to my chief pilot. I said, why are there no female pilots? And he came up with the most ridiculous answer that can be never repeated in public.
Go on, you have to now. You have to.
No. And I said, if a woman can run a country, she can certainly fly a plane. And, you know, the other day was history for me. The captain was female, the co-pilot was female, all the cabin crew were female, the engineer was female, and all the passengers were male. That's not true. And now we have, 120 female pilots. We have a larger percentage of female pilots in the United States. So there's a huge amount of talent in Southeast Asia. And I think you're looking at these 4 guys here, that's the exciting thing for me. And when we're developing our own fintech business, we're not afraid of Alipay, because we think there's so many different things we can do with Big Pay, and what we're doing on building a tokenized loyalty system that we think can be used all over Southeast Asia, because the talent is here. There is a lot of talent, and we'll follow Forrest's path and kidnap a few people as well. We have planes as well, so we can kidnap them from a few different areas as well. But I think that's the message I want to give to everyone here. That I'm a big believer in ASEAN. I'm a big believer in the potential, and I think we've got it all to come. And Gojek and Grab and other companies have shown that it's not just about the billions. That Uber can't win in here. They've effectively been beaten here, and there are lots of, and that's because of local knowledge, local talent, and local resilience and energy. So Chatri's got UFC there, and he owns this market, even though UFC is much larger. So
not for long.
Sorry?
Not for long.
Okay.
They're not going to be much larger for long.
Okay. I'll tell Dana that.
Yes, please. Please.
So there's a good future there.
To Tony's point, I just wanted to add about Tony's point about Asia as a whole, as a continent, has always been known to copycat or be late in the game in terms of innovation from Silicon Valley, from all the different industries, from medical, et cetera. And I agree with Tony in that this is the first time where you're seeing an inflection point where Asian companies are now becoming global brand leaders and exporting. So I'll give you a great case in point. My Western counterparts, in many ways, I've been doing martial arts for 34 years, my whole life. I train every day. And they, unfortunately, damaged the word martial arts and mixed martial arts. Asia's been the home of martial arts for 5,000 years, and it's about values. It's about heroes and stories. You see, martial arts is the way of the warrior in Asia. It's about, through thousands of hours of training, inheriting values like integrity, humility, honor, respect, courage, and discipline. Very much like the Olympics. But what happened in the West is they took it and made it a violent thing, a blood sport, ugliness, hatred, anger, and then people ate it up and thought that's martial arts. And that's what, on a personal level, really disturbed me and made me feel like, I want to show the world the true beauty of martial arts, real Asian heroes on the global stage, and celebrate Asia's greatest cultural treasure together with our heroes, our values, and our stories. And so our content now is exporting all over the world, 138 countries now, going to 194 countries next 3 years, with authentic martial arts content, with values that resonate. And so I think that is something that I'm very proud of. When I look at even Gojek and the story of Uber coming in, we used to be crushed by the West, if you will, but now it's the rise of the Asian century, and I really believe in ASEAN entrepreneurs and brands and what we're doing to represent this side of the world.
There's one theme that's come out in what a lot of you gentlemen have been talking about, and that's the theme of competition. Whether it be from the West or whether it be more locally here in Asia. And I bring this up because we were all having a chat prior to the panel. And I want you to be as honest now as you were then about how you feel about your competition.
I will just say, Darth Vader.
He just said it. He just said he hates them. They destroyed martial arts.
No, yes. But if you ask 4 billion people on Asian culture and historians who are not, they did. They have. They do. And that's why I'm bringing back martial arts, the real martial arts. I would say it's the difference between Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker. One champion is Luke Skywalker. Okay. We want to bring the good, the world, the thousand the heroes of the story. It's the truth.
So for me, it's kind of weird. Look, we were really tiny, and then we started AirAsia, and then all the big airlines came in with their low-cost carriers, right? named them after all the animals. We had tigers, we had lions. In Malaysia, actually, we named one after an insect called firefly. Really stupid name, because it's the shortest living insect in the insect kingdom. So, I always told Ho Ching at Temasek that Tiger Air should be called Pussycat, really. It was such a small airline.
It is coming out. It's coming out.
Coming out. It kept us in control for a while. But honestly, again, without sounding like Miss Universe, competition is great because it keeps you on your toes, right? I'm not saying I love everyone and I want global peace and all that kind of stuff.
You don't?
Well, I don't think it's going to be global peace, right? Not in the airline business. I'm talking about the airline business. But I mean, I think, that's what is exciting about Southeast Asia, that there is competition, that there is airlines such as AirAsia are allowed to exist, right? Because when I started, I was against Singapore Airlines, Malaysian Airlines, Thai International, Garuda, right? They were all owned by the government. And, it was not easy. It has not been easy. But we are where we are. And now a lot of other low-cost carriers as well. So, I got no problem with my competitors. They seem nice guys and girls. And I think there's a big enough market for all of us. I think the transition now for Asian companies that have been around for a long time and with new companies is learning to coexist. And I think that's an evolution that we're happening. And AirAsia is probably slightly in the forefront of that because we've been doing it for a long time. And now there's a lot more competition, a lot more airlines, et cetera. And I think that's the big transformation that is happening in Asia, that governments are now getting used and seeing the benefits of opening up the market, opening up competition, not being nationalistic, not being protectionist. And I always say to leaders that if you put people first, then the decision becomes very easy. So I didn't really answer your question. Do I like my competitors? I don't know them because they never want to meet me. But I had this book here, so if anyone of my competitors here, someone just gave it to me. There's another panel going on the other side.
Which Tony, by the way, wanted to be on desperately.
Yeah, it's about how you're going to live to 100 years old. I'm not sure who's in that panel, but the guy who's leading the panel gave me the book.
I only gave it to Tony, nobody else on the panel.
Because I'm obviously the oldest. I'm obviously the oldest on the panel. So I just want to tell all my competitors that I'm not going to live to 100 years old. So you're not going to get rid of me. And I have a prime minister who's 94 years old as well. So we know how to live long in Malaysia.
So I guess from my end, I used to think that way, right? I mean, as a developer in a site-specific country, I said, who are my competitors, etc. So I thought, let me realign my thinking. And I said, instead of competing with the developers, let me partner with them. Why be enemies if I can be friends with everyone? So I'm a completely agnostic supplier, joint venture partner. And as I was investigating the biggest industry is real estate by far, right? And I was investigating the biggest companies in the world, based in Asia actually, $56 billion market cap, 60-year-old company, and we're talking about the likes of Uber and Airbnb. I really wanted to see how I could use that in my space. Being asset light, being global, using technology to truly disrupt the industry. So I never buy land anymore. I don't have inventory. I make thousands of % return on equity in every project, and I'm happy. So am I afraid that people are going to copy me? Obviously, I had to create a sort of a barrier to entry, right? And the differentiating part here is really to create the branding of the world's best architects and designers. So obviously, every day, I think if there's a new entrant, will that affect our operations? I mean, it bothers us, but at the end of the day, we just have to be steadfast in our goals and just keep on fighting.
That's supposed to be the sincerest form of flattery, isn't it, when somebody copies you?
Yeah, but I'd rather that they don't.
Confident enough as it is. Now, we don't have a huge amount of time left to go, but we did all want to give you guys out there the opportunity to ask a question. So like I said, we don't have a huge amount of time. You've got an amazing panel here in front of you. So is there anybody out there that wants to ask any one of these gentlemen a question? Because there are some microphones, I believe. Have we scared everybody into silence?
Yeah.
Oh, we've got one over here. Question in the middle. We've got a microphone coming over.
Hi, gents. It's very noticeable that there are no Southeast Asian females on the stage, and I'm looking forward
We
to
didn't
the
pick the
day.
panel.
I know. I'm looking forward to the day when that will be the case. But thank you, Milken, because we did have the Women's Leadership Summit. Thank you very much. That was brilliant.
The face of one championship is Angela Lee, world champion, and she's female, and so just want to let you know that.
That is awesome, Chatri. And I also want to say, loved your story about your mum, because clearly she was instrumental in making one champion happen.
For sure, for sure.
And
I think our millions of fans all over the continent have my mom to thank.
Well, on that note, and I wondered if I could be so selfish as to get a quick comment from each of the 4 remaining gentlemen. Behind every successful innovator, entrepreneur, is a wonderful woman. I'd be curious to know who is the woman who has most influenced each of you in your journey, and in what way? As quickly as you can, because Oriel will kill me for going.
It seems like that is a very easy answer. That will be my wife. And the things I little bit, that is actually how I ended up in Singapore. And I was born and grew up in China, and I studied my undergrad and then worked in China, and then went to Stanford for my MBA degree. So I met my wife there, and she studied in the States under a Temasek scholarship. So she has a 6 years obligation to work for Temasek. And her father told me, if you don't go to Singapore, 6 years. 6
Oh, so I thought you said 60.
And
Kind of makes sense with Temasek.
And her father told me, if you don't go to Singapore, no negotiation. Yeah, so that's how I end up in Singapore. And otherwise, there will be no my entrepreneur journey. There's no existence of my company today.
Who wants to go next?
My mother, 100%.
Your wife's far away, isn't she?
Yeah, I just got married.
Yeah.
Married, so really, my wife has nothing to do with me.
She's very far away. She's overseas.
And my ex-wife definitely had nothing to do with me. So my mother used to sell Tupperware, and she could sell ice to an Eskimo. She was a phenomenal motivator. And I used to go around Malaysia with her. She was selling Tupperware. She'd compose music songs. We'd be playing, I got a Tupper feeling up in my head, sell more Tupperware, sell more Tupperware. And it was unbelievable, the power of I saw how she controlled people. So she kind of proved to me, she was a music teacher, that you could do anything you want to do if you put your mind to it. And that's kind of been my philosophy. I always say, dare to dream, believe the unbelievable, and never take no for an answer, because it's amazing the power of the human spirit of what you can do when you put your mind to it. I was selling music. I knew nothing about airlines, right? I was selling Madonna and dangdut music, and I was sitting in a bar. Time Warner came along, and I thought they were on drugs with AOL. And so I quit in Rockefeller Plaza, and I flew back in London, and a friend of mine, and Manfredi's over there, Stelios, was on TV talking about EasyJet. So I thought, wow, what a great idea. So I went to Luton Airport, and I decided to start an airline. Now, there's a very fine line between brilliance and stupidity. It's really narrow, but I thought I was young enough, so I'll give it a shot. But at the back of my mind was my mother, because she inspired me that you could do anything you want to do if you put your mind to it.
So what did your mother say when you came home and said you're going to start an airline?
No, she had passed away by then, but she would have probably said go for it. 99.9% of people laughed, right? But I always said I didn't want to sit there at 55 and say I wish I did it. I don't care about failing, and I've had some pretty spectacular failures, right? Formula One was pretty spectacular, and I own a football team, which is not doing so well.
They're improving.
But hey, I don't. If I get hit by a bus tomorrow, and many people would like to drive that bus, I've lived a great life. So I don't sit there and analyze and think, should I do it or not do it? I live for tomorrow, right? I want to make each day the most productive day, and be positive. And if you fail, you fail. But at least you tried.
Yeah.
So I have no problem failing. I don't want to sit there and say, I wish I'd done that, because it's too late, right? Yeah. So, many people said, why'd you get married? Again. I'll do that next year.
Yeah.
If I'm still married. which I will be.
We might not be after today. We'll have to wait and see. Robbie?
My wife, no doubt, saw me. Sorry? She's not even here. See, it's not even a plug. But totally convinced me that was the way to go and just let me be. I was in a comfortable situation, could have just continued in the family business. But she knew me so well, I wasn't going to be happy not being independent. So struck it and paid off.
Yeah, I mean, I think we at Gojek we have a spouse group because again, we're a collective of leadership and everyone shares the burden. I think being not at home, many of us also have kids, so being able to juggle between, taking care of family and stuff, and the spouses actually took that and then still sane enough to continue to be our spouses until now, which is incredible. And I think. But yeah, that's kind of the. But also on top of it, I think we tend to also be very inspired with the stories about our drivers and merchants. So many, I mean, a lot of from a composition perspective, only 5% of our drivers women, but it's first time that they will be able to actually be providing a transport solution to the public market. On top of it, but the merchants is actually where the stories was such an amazing stories that inspired us, because a lot of food merchants, and I think it's also true for Forrest, a lot of the first-time entrepreneurs is actually, because of our platform, is women, right? Women that actually needs to work for their families at home or at the kind of places where they stay. But now, because of the opportunity that hopefully we created, they can also start generating income. And that's actually been a very amazing story that we always inspired. Well,
do we have one final question from the floor? Over here in the corner.
Hi. Tony, where's your cap?
Oh, is that your question?
Actually, I'm curious to think, given you all are the younger generation, next generation of entrepreneurs, do you think the current education system, I'm assuming most of you are parents, will equip the next generation for the future that's to come? The future where technology, where robotics and artificial intelligence are converging, and whether the next generation will be equipped to handle all that and getting themselves reskilled and disrupted all the time.
If I can just take that first, okay? I think it goes back to what Forrest says is a bigger issue. In Asia, the family culture at home is go get a great education, go get a safe job, forget about following your passion, forget about changing the world, forget about taking risk. And that is a fundamental problem. When I first came to Singapore, there was no entrepreneurship center so now there's a little bit of a startup culture bubbling up, but the social acceptance is a big, big factor. It doesn't matter where you're educated, how you're educated, if your social fabric is preventing you from chasing your dreams and living your passion. I think that's a bigger factor about being equipped, because I'll tell you, Tony knew nothing about music. He knows everything about airlines now, but he didn't know anything about airlines back then. I'd never done sports media in my entire life. I mean, I was a martial artist, but I knew nothing about it. But, I guess my mom or my parents, whatever, they just brought me up to chase my dreams and live my passion. So it didn't really matter what my education was, because if you have the guts to go after something, it's like entrepreneurship is like this. You're driving in the middle of the night with no lights and you can't see, and every now and then you can, there's a flicker of a star that you can see and you just chase it, and you have to create your destiny. And that's something that no one can tell you except your value system and how you were raised. I really believe that's a fundamental problem with Asia.
Yeah. I think that's a really pertinent question, because I'm not sure it is. But we as humans will always find a way anyway. I think education's always a couple of steps behind in terms of, especially in Asia right now, it's very rote learning. You memorize books, you have to get 17 A's, etc. I think education is about exploiting every child's potential, whether it's sport, whether it's art, drama, whatever. And I think that's something governments have to look at. I think more and more, and certainly for the tech world, I think kids will adapt very quickly anyway, whether it's through gaming, etc. But I think education has to look at being more communicative and allowing people to express themselves, and not just about academic achievements. There's a lot more to it to prepare yourself for a very competitive world. It's not just about getting 15 A's or 17 A's. And you see a few institutions trying to do things a little bit differently, but I think there's a long way to go. I'm not sure it's really there at the moment.
But just to answer, just to touch on that, right? Before you used to see a lot of this brain drain, right? When people, I would say the more capable individuals from Asia would actually go to the West and stay there and get jobs there. Maybe work for Apple, etc. Forrest went to the same alma mater, Stanford. Chatri went to Harvard. We all came back to Asia and actually did entrepreneurship here. And I think you kind of see that as a growing trend as well. People want to come back to their nations and do nation building and actually really create an influence and an impact in the societies we live in.
One of the reasons why Mike Milken holds these summits is education. But of course, another reason, and many others, are to motivate and inspire and to make each individual person realize that they can affect change. They can certainly start something to affect change. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to put your hands together for our panel, because they have done that today.
That was fun.